Welcome to this video on how the ego is formed. It's been a while since I've made a video on letting go, and as I've said before, I've been wanting to make these videos as I embody the things that I'm talking about so that they can really come from a place of truth for me. And one thing that has really changed for me lately has been the discovery of what's called the Sedona Method. Now, if you've been watching these videos, you'll know that I've been working specifically with a book called Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. That's pretty much been the entirety of my journey with letting go up to this point. But just recently, I was putting some posts out on Facebook and someone commented, "Hey, have you seen the Sedona Method?" So I'd seen the Sedona Method previously. I've come across it previously in different research I've been doing, but I hadn't ever really dived into it. I hadn't ever really opened it up and given it a fair trial, as Goenka would say. So I realized that the reason I hadn't checked out the Sedona Method previously was because I was very infatuated with David Hawkins as a teacher. When I discovered his work, David Hawkins' work, Letting Go, about 3 years ago, it was the first time that I'd come across a spiritual teacher who seemed to embody, the ideal Western, scientifically grounded, rational, white male scientist who it was very easy for me from my programmed perspective to accept what he was saying because of all of that. So I really took to David Hawkins very quickly because I just found it very easy, the way he communicated, and the spiritual truths that he was sharing were encased in this very believable outfit. So that's why I stuck with Letting Go. I stuck with David Hawkins, got right into his teachings, have read a lot, if not most of the stuff that he's written, like the books that he's put out. And so when I did hear about the Sedona Method, probably about a year or so ago, I was a bit skeptical. I looked at it, looked a bit commercial to me. It's really been geared up for personal development. So that's why I had a bit of resistance to it at first. But just recently it popped up again, and I was really asking for some answers. I was asking how I could really take letting go to a new level, because I've been coming up against some blocks, as I'm sure you have in your journey of letting go. There's some certain challenges that have been coming up that just that standard approach to letting go hasn't really been able to get me through. Mind you, it's worked for a whole lot of stuff. My life is radically different. I'm radically different as a person to who I was 1 year ago when I started making these videos, or 3 years ago when I first discovered letting go. But there does come some points in the journey where just using the standard sort of things that are talked about, that I've been talking about in these videos, that David Hawkins talks about, it doesn't get you through all the way. So for me, for example, I am now, as a person, way happier, way more peaceful than I was even a year ago. My needs, what I actually need to be happy, is radically decreased. I feel really, probably for the first time in my life, that I can be completely happy without a relationship. That's a huge, huge win for me. Like, if I was to go the rest of my life without having an intimate relationship, I'd be fine with that. If I did have intimate relationship, I'd be fine with that. Either way, it's all good. In the area of money, you know, I've gotten myself to a place where I feel quite content. If I've got a lot of money, if I've got very little money, doesn't make too much difference. My health is better than it's ever been before. I'm feeling more calm, more peaceful. In terms of the scale of consciousness, I feel that I've reached a point where I've pretty well consolidated the level of acceptance, where I can just accept whatever life brings to me with very little fuss. I definitely drop down, and as I've said before, as you go on the journey, as you climb this scale of consciousness, as you get higher, bigger shadows emerge because your unconscious mind is now aware that you can handle them. Your unconscious mind is where all of this stuff is suppressed, and it releases trauma, pain, your shadows, your suppressed emotions as it senses that you are capable of handling them. Your unconscious mind is very, very intelligent in that way. So as you climb, bigger things come up, and that's been happening for me, especially the last few months. Bigger self-worth issues, you know, deeper conflicts have been arising, uglier aspects of myself have been arising because I've been in a space where I can witness them. So that's where I'm at. Wanted to share a bit about my journey, bit of an update, and just to encourage you, yeah, this letting go stuff, it works. It really, really works. And as you get to these higher levels in your own growth, in your own consciousness, freedom, really, you will naturally start to attract, because you're in a higher energy state, you're in a higher energy field, you'll naturally start to attract the tools, the insights, the awareness that can help you get to the next level. See, a year ago, I probably wasn't ready for something like the Sedona Method. That's probably why it didn't show up for me. But now I'm on this level where I can really start to apply these lessons. So you might even start noticing that it's not all just about letting go. Letting go is like the container which allows you to bring in all these other healing tools, you know, which allows you to naturally start improving your diet, taking better care of yourself without struggle and without resistance. That's the whole point. Which allows you to attract tools, teachers, experiences, all of which help you to rise to those higher levels of awareness. So what I'm about to share now is a story. It's just a fictional story. It's kind of like a depiction of what happens at the beginning of the formation of your ego, how your ego is created, right? And I wanted to share this because it really inspired me when I read this. In fact, I started weeping when I read this because it just outlined that process of how we're created so vividly and so beautifully. So again, it's just a story. It's not necessarily a new theory to replace any other theories of early childhood development, as it says here. But it's very, very powerful. So I encourage you to just listen to this with an open heart, with an open mind. And it's going to give you some really amazing insights about your ego. So here we go. By the way, this is from the book, The Sedona Method, written by Hale Dwoskin, who was a disciple or a follower of Lester Levinson, who apparently created the Sedona Method. There's a couple of interesting issues around the whole origin of the Sedona Method. But again, I'm going to be diving into this in future videos because it's quite fascinating how this all came about. But right now, I'm just going to share this story of how your ego forms. So here we go. So the following story is merely a story. Its resemblance or lack of resemblance to your life is purely coincidental. Although it's designed to give you a taste of things may have evolved, it's neither meant to be a new theory of early childhood development, nor to confirm or dispute any other theory. It's also not meant to take the place of or challenge any particular spiritual belief. Your life experience may be similar or different. Either way, do your best to identify with the evolution of the character in this story without being too concerned yet about how it applies to you. We begin with the premise that we are now and have always been unlimited beingness. Thus, you, the main character, start out as undifferentiated consciousness, aware of nothing in particular, whole and complete unto yourself. This is the canvas on which the story is painted and which allows for even the possibility of it to unfold. Furthermore, the canvas is uninvolved with and unchanged by the telling or the unfolding of the story. At some point, sounds, sensations, and pictures start to arise in this effortless, choiceless awareness that you are. Some sounds are repetitive, like the gentle thumping of your mother's heart and breathing, which resemble the ebb and flow of an ocean's tides. Off in the distance, there are also muffled sounds, including your mother's voice and the voices of other people and events in her environment. There are sensations of warmth, floating, and gentle rocking as her body moves through life and your world moves in unison. There's also an undulating semi-darkness that envelops and fills awareness. All these sensations, sounds, and pictures drift in and out of consciousness at rest. This beingness continues until stronger sensations arise in consciousness when your world starts to contract. For however long it takes, there's a transition from a world filled only with relatively muted sensations, sounds, and pictures to a world filled with much more distinct, stronger ones. The birth experience is occasionally violent, yet no matter how apparently traumatic the transition is, once you've come through it, these sensations also drift in and out of consciousness. For a while, you spend most of your time asleep. Soon, pictures have more definition as your eyes begin to function in this new world. Your ears and the rest of your body also become accustomed to living in a world filled with air instead of amniotic fluid. Over time, patterns appear in consciousness as different groups of sensations, sounds, and pictures arise at varying intervals. Soon, some of these will be recognized as your body. There's an underlying sense of unity between you as the background and any perceptions that are arising. There's a background feeling of love, even towards experiences that could be labeled as traumatic. Perceptions, including those of the body, do not yet have names or meanings. They merely arise and then subside into that which you are. Body parts become objects of play once you discover that certain inner shifts cause them to react. They're enjoyed but not owned by anyone in particular. If you're having what most people would consider a normal infancy, benevolent presences come in and out of consciousness that will later be called mummy and daddy. These presences come with particular patterns of perception. Over time and through the hopefully patient repetition of different sounds and movements of these benevolent presences, you begin to be introduced to the world of concepts and symbols. Mummy and daddy point to themselves over and over again and say, "Mummy," or "Daddy," and then point to your body and repeat your name, They also point to various patterns of light, sound, and sensation, and give those names as well. This game is fun, and you get rewarded for almost every attempt to play it. Eventually, you discover that certain inner shifts of perception cause your body to be able to make sounds like theirs. Now, as you start to enter the world of concepts and symbols, it begins to get harder, except during sleep, to remain at rest as the background unity that you are. You have an increasing sense of separation from your basic nature. Of course, not everything in life is fun and games. Some people's stories up to this point are quite traumatic. But this unfolding play that you'll later call your life has not taken you in completely. Consciousness continues to move in and out of identifying with the central character in the same way you probably identify now with the characters in a good book or a movie. As you start to use language, you may even go through a period where you refer in the third person to the person who you later believe is you. It's Hallie's story, or it's Hallie's toy, or it's Mary's toy, not mine. You see that separation that we have? Yes, you cry if you get hurt, or you scream if you don't get what you want, but without the personal stickiness that arises later. Then, around the age of 2.5, there's another transition. You've now been so persuaded that you are a separate identity, for example, Hallie or Mary, that suddenly everything becomes about my toy, my needs, and me. Now the sensations, pictures, and sounds that arise in consciousness are given meaning and a history based on this growing belief in a me. And that's when you begin wanting to change the way that things are. You resist what is. You want things to go your way. The name for this phase is the terrible twos. It's often a very difficult period for both parent and child. The world is no longer as secure as it may once have appeared to be. You may be in competition with siblings for attention. Since everything is separate from you, everything's a potential threat. To get mummy and daddy's approval becomes hugely important, and failing to get it is potentially life-threatening. This is real. This happened to all of us in one way or another. You want to control what used to appear to be a perfect world. You long for the ease and simplicity of your parents and your world controlling you. Simultaneously, you want to assert your will over the world. You want to get approval or even disapproval from outside of you. Yet you also want to go back to being in love with all that is. You want to be safe and secure and survive, but you also want the sense of being a separate entity to die and disappear. You long to be in unity again, one with all that is, yet you are driven to assert your separate, unique identity. Now, for some of us, developing separation is a gradual process, starting way before we are 2. For others, it's quite sudden, but there appears to be no turning back for anybody unless, as they get older, they do a process such as the one you're learning in this book. Letting go, Sedona Method, release, surrender. No matter how much we long for the security and unity we felt when we were very young, the developmental process runs its course. Does any of this sound or feel familiar? We could expand on it endlessly, taking in all the subtle and not so subtle nuances of each birth and how each baby's life unfolds. This is enough, however, for you to get the picture, specifically that as we lock into identifying with a particular body/mind as our own, we begin to be more highly motivated by some basic needs, the underlying wants. There's 4 underlying wants that the Sedona Method looks at. The fundamental wants of the ego self that reinforce the sense of separation and cause us endless suffering. So that's all I'm going to share now, is just that process of how the ego comes to be. That to me was the most profound, I mean, very simple, but it really resonated with me because it shows you how you go from being consciousness to individualizing into believing that you're a body and a mind. And that's all that it fundamentally is. The root of all of our suffering is a belief, a very, very, very deep unconscious belief that we are the body and the mind. So I'm going to be getting into the Sedona Method in future videos. I'm going to start talking about some of these techniques, some of these principles, because it's been 1 week that I've come across this material and I've been applying it very hardcore, and it's really shifting things very quickly for me. I can feel a lot of changes happening. So that's not to say anything that we've looked at with letting go, the David Hawkins material, or even any of the stuff that I've been teaching, you know, some of my own sharing, some of my own perspectives, some of the things I've learned, the techniques of how to let go. It's not to say that this is contradicting any of that. Instead, it's like pouring rocket fuel on it. This is the beauty of it. This is actually the granular, deep, you know, very practical approach that I've been looking for, that I've been, you know, even creating, that I've been sharing, because it really, really goes to the core of the ego and how to start, releasing yourself from its grip on the deepest possible level. So I'm really excited to share that in some future videos. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that inspires you and gave you some insight as to how you came to be, like how this sense of you, who you think you are, how that formed at the start of this lifetime. So hit that like button for me. Comment below what you got out of this. That helps the algorithm to promote my videos. I do like sharing these insights, and I want to help reach as many people with this kind of material as possible. If you have any questions, post them below. And also, if you want to see some more of my stuff, check out my website, mose.life, where I share a lot of different insights that I've had around healing and personal evolution, ascension, growing in consciousness, whatever you want to call it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.